Well, to start off with, first we're going to go to File, and then as you can see, we can have a name for the file, which I'm going to say PSD tutorial, Photoshop tutorial. The width and the height, you can change it and have the canvas that you want. For example, I'm going to put 10 and 5, and I'm going to be using inches, although you can change it to whatever you prefer. And then the resolution, usually 150 is a decent resolution, but some people like to use 300, which is a maximum. Now when you have your canvas, you can go to your desktop, for example, and drag an image on it, just like I'm doing. When you have it, you can see that this cross is actually indicating you that you can transform it, so you can scale it and move it. When you're done, you press enter and the cross will be gone, and that means that the picture is going to stay where it is right now. However, I'm going to show you another way of starting, and it's also going to File, Open, and you just search for your folder wherever you have your image. You can have different types of image and formats, PNG or TIFF. I use JPEG a lot. And you just press open, and here it is. Next, we are going to go to image, and then you can see that you have different adjustments, but first, image size, where you can do the same thing that we did earlier while doing File and New and opening and dragging again your picture. You can change your document size and the resolution. Now going again to image, we can go back to the adjustments. You can change the brightness, contrast, level, saturation. You can make it black and white if you want. You have tons of options that you can play with, but let's do brightness and contrast, and all the rest is basically the same. You can go higher or lower and just experiment by yourself if you still don't know how do you actually want it. For example, right now I feel like the contrast might be a little too strong because of this moon here, so I'm gonna put it a little lower. When you're done, okay, and you're ready to go. As a Photoshop beginner, the toolbox is what you're mostly going to use. What we have right now is a selection tool. It can be elliptical or single line, many different ways, but the most simple one is a square one. So for example, you can make a square wherever you want. If you click inside, you can move it and adjust it. And for example, we're going to select these two ladies that are walking on the street. Once we have them selected, we go to the Move tool, we click on it, and if we click inside the selected square, it will move all our selection, just like that. We go to right click and deselect. Now that we have these ladies moved, we still have a gap. Now what we can do is select again, but instead of using the square, we can use the magic wand. It basically selects the same colors, for example the pink or green. If there are different tones, then it might be a little more specific, but for us, our square, it's perfect. It's One click and it's done. So then we can go to the bucket and change the color that we want. You can move it all. You can even use the RGBs if you know the exact numbers, or you can select it from the picture and it will get you the closest one that there is on the palette. You click OK, you go to your selected area, and you just click again. Now you can go to the move tool again and just replace it somewhere else again. But as the point of this was to actually cover the hole that we had, I'm just going to leave it there. So when you want to deselect, you always have to go back to either the selection or the magic wand and go to deselect with the right click. However, let's just go Control Z and let's say that we want to be more precise with what we're doing. So we're going to go to the lasso selection, and again, it can be magnetic, it can be more curved, but I like to use this one, which is the most simple one, and the polygonal one. And what you're going to do is, for example, if we want to take these two trash cans and move them or copy them somewhere, then we're just gonna do all their contour. Every click is gonna stay, and once you're done, there's this little circle that is gonna appear, and then you see that it's selected. You go to edit and copy. You can deselect or simply, well, you can press ESC anytime that this happens when you don't know what your mouse is really doing. But usually you go to your right click, deselect, and you're good to go. So now we go to edit and paste. Now we have 4 trash cans instead of 2. We go to the move tool again, and now let me zoom out. You can position it wherever you want. It can be flying trash cans, it can be on the top of a building, but let's just put them somewhere where you can actually not notice that we photoshopped. This can be a lot of fun if you just take your time. Another tool that you're going to use a lot is the crop tool. Just by moving these sides, you can decide that, hey, maybe those 2 green and pink buildings weren't as pretty. Alright, you select it, press enter, and you have your new image again. Now, another tool I want to show you are the brushes. Again, you can pick different types, but the brush tool is the most simple one. And I'm going to show you, if you do the right click, you can actually change the size of it. And you can pick different shapes and sharpnesses. For example, this one is a little blurry, or this one is actually a grass or painting. Let me make it bigger so that you can see better. So it all depends on what you're trying to do, but there are tons of different possibilities. So I'm taking this green leaves, and of course I want to make them green, but yeah, I'm not sure what green I want, and I don't know the RGB, so I'm just gonna pick from the picture. And for example, I'll take this green. Alright, it's still giving me a pretty close thing. Now that I've selected, I'm just, with one click, I just get these. You can make it thicker, play with it. However, I don't like it that much. So I'm gonna select the eraser that has the same options as the brushes. it can be different types of brushes, but to make it simple, I'm going to take a round one and I'm just going to leave a little bit of grass on the side because, hey, you don't know where I'm looking from. Another cool thing is that you can change also the opacity of the brush, and as you can see, it's not deleting everything but just part of it. However, I'm going to leave it as it was, so Control Z, and we're back to where we were. Every time you make a new move, the best thing to do is, well, first open the window and have your layers, and then make a layer every time you're doing something. For example, text, which we haven't talked about. Just make your square approximately how big you want it. You decide what type of letters you want to use, the size, which 24 might be too big for what I want, and then you can decide if you want to add some effects to it or not. I'm gonna center it, very basic, normal stuff that we also have in Word and other programs, and I'm gonna write something random like thank you for watching. If you press enter, it will stay that way. However, if you want to move it without having to go to the move tool, just move it before. Now, as you have it on another layer, you can make it visible or not. You can play with its opacity, and you can also put it underneath other layers. You can move layers. So for example, now that it's underneath layer 1, which is where we have our trash cans and our little greens, we could overlap it. However, that's not what we want to do because I still want you guys to see it. But if we put it underneath the background, then of course you won't see it. So always make sure that your layers are the way you want them to be. Finally, you gotta save it. Go to save, and you can decide the name. You can change it if you didn't put the right one. You can decide where to put it in the folder. I'm gonna put it on my desktop. And then the format. You can decide if you want to do a Photoshop file, which you can then open again tomorrow and continue working on it. Or for example, if you want to send it to a friend and not have a lot of space taken, or you just want to print it, then you can save it as a TIFF, PNG, or a JPEG. Alright, now that you have that, you only have the quality left to decide. You can use a bar, as always on Photoshop. Everything is about the bars, medium, maximum, low, and you can also play with the format options. However, I always like to have the preview of how much it's going to take. But usually these three options don't change much. As you can see, 1.2, 1.1. However, the quality does change drastically, the size of your file. But once you press OK, you're good to go.